Hello, and welcome to another interview. This is going to be interview number 5. And today we have one of my new friends and somebody that's doing some amazing things in the accessibility space to make one of the more complicated web components or digital components, that is maps, accessible for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're visual or non-visual. Everything is accessible inside and out, top to bottom, and it's fascinating. I When I met him and when he first showed me this technology, I knew I had to show it to other people, and ultimately we had to have a conversation about it and hopefully push it out to more people. And so that's what interview number 5 is going to be. Please welcome Brandon Biggs. Jump in. Welcome to another interview. Today we have my new friend. We've recently met and had some phenomenal conversations around some very cool technology. So excited, Brandon, to have you on here talking about what it is you're doing and pursuing and trying to make happen. So
yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you so much for joining. And why don't we start off with introductions? Why don't you let everyone watching know who you are and what it is that you are trying to do, and then we'll jump in.
My name is Brandon Biggs, and I am the CEO of XR Navigation, a PhD candidate at the Georgia Institute of Technology and an engineer at the Smith Cadwell Eye Research Institute. And almost all of my work revolves around making cartography accessible to blind people, digital cartography accessible to blind people. So that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and he's shown me what this looks like. I took it, and the team of apprentices that I help supervise and oversee, I had to show them. So very, very cool, very, very fascinating. It almost has. I think you're the one that described it this way, like a video-esque approach to it.
Video game-esque approach, yes.
Video game-esque approach to it, which I absolutely love. As someone who grew up playing video games, can really appreciate that. So why don't we start super high level and give us the rundown or the overview of what XR does and sort of how it works.
Yeah, so there are two different types of maps. So when we're talking about maps, there are referential maps, which are basically where the features on the map themselves are the most important. And these would be things like travel maps, indoor maps, hotel maps, airplane seat maps, transit maps, that kind of thing. Then there are thematic maps, which are where the features have some kind of numeric or categorical element overlaid on top of those features. And these would be things like COVID statistic maps, voting election result maps, hurricane maps, and different types of maps where you do more data analytics. So both of these are what I mean when I say the word map. Right now, if a blind person goes onto a website with their screen reader, and for those who don't know, a screen reader reads out digital content and makes it into speech for blind people. The map typically reads graphic clickable blank, which is not helpful at all. So if I'm trying to go and reserve a seat on an airplane, I pretty much just hear, blank when I go to select a seat. And if I'm a family, I have a family of 4, and I want to know where my kids are placed, there's no way for me to get that information. And I typically need to go and contact customer support and say, hey, am I sitting together with my family? That kind of thing. I can also make some inferences through, looking at the seat numbers, because that is accessible, but I can't really change it accessibly. So that is kind of one use case. And we have a ton of different, use cases for digital maps. But the reason why I got into this was because I really needed an accessible way to access geographic maps personally, because I'm blind myself. So you really described the basic fundamental principle of the non-visual experience of audio. But just to kind of expand a little bit on it, it is an inclusive digital map viewer, and it's called Audium, and my company XR Navigation produces it. And the visual experience is what you would expect from a map, except it allows low vision users to zoom in up to 200% without squashing interface elements, adjust the border width of features, change the contrast level, switch between using patterns or colors, And if they want to actually have the content read out to them, they can use they can click on the object and it'll read out the name of the feature that they're clicking on or the object that they're clicking on. The non-visual experience is very similar to a video game where you use your arrow keys, touchscreen, or other controller to move a character a user-specified distance around the map. And as you move over different features, it'll say the name of that feature along with a short sound representing that feature. So, for example, it would say Fillmore Street, and then have the sound of a concrete footstep to represent Fillmore Street. We also add on some what are called binaural audio into that map as well in many cases. And this would be where the sounds are around you. If you're wearing headphones, they'll be around your head and you can like rotate to face that sound. So if you're pretending like you're playing Marco Polo and you're the blinded it player and everybody around you is shouting Polo, you can turn towards that voice and walk towards it and locate that voice, that Polo, in out of a big crowd. So that's the idea behind using binaural audio. So we use all these different features, and the most amazing thing is that it runs just off of the exact same data that a visual map is using. So we use what's called GeoJSON. It's what's called a vector data source, and so it's computer readable geographic data, and that's all that audio needs to run.
Yeah, and what I think I find so fascinating about this is when we talk to people that aren't in the accessibility space or that haven't that don't have a disability, to them there is this like night and day difference, right, between like what is accessible and what is what they're used to. And so a lot of them have this sort of pre-assumed assumption that accessibility is going to look different or feel different or sound different. It's going to change it completely. And you've taken something that has historically been inaccessible and added a layer of accessibility, but left all of the visual components and interactivity completely intact. And,
For sure.
I think that's what I find so fascinating is you took that conversation and you basically said, no, that's not how it is. And let's show you.
We live in a world that is tyrannized by sight. Everybody just thinks that sight is the most important sense, and that's the only important sense. Data is amodal. Data is asensory. There's nothing inherently visual about data. And this holds true across Excel data, data that's going to be in a spreadsheet, geographic data, sensor data, any type of data that you can think of, unless if it's like a picture of, like an actual photograph, the data, and even photographs can even be amodal to some extent, for sure. But that data is numbers. It's literally numbers, and those need to be converted into some representation. And I call it data representation. This should be the field that people study to learn how to represent data in different modalities. We have a field that is very famous called data visualization or cartography, and these are very, very much visual centric. People don't learn how to represent data through text. They don't learn how to represent data through sound. They don't learn how to represent data through tactile experiences. And because of that, our whole entire society is built around this idea of vision, which is so sad because not everybody is a visual learner. Just look at blind people. Not everybody is a tactile learner or an audio learner. Because you're blind, when you go through school, you learn how to use both a braille display and your screen reader, which is audio. There are some people who prefer using a braille display, and there are some people who prefer using audio. And that is fine. That's how people are. They're different. But because sighted people only learn how to use their vision, they are forced to use that vision, whether they like it or not, whether it's their most efficient modality or not. And I think that this is why many people have difficulty with school, is because they're always forced to use one modality. And the sight is not the best for most things, and many things, like especially reading large amounts of content. The amount of books that a blind person reads is just significantly more than a sighted person. And that's just one example. And so coming back to data of geographic data, there was nothing that said this is supposed to be through vision. And it's completely a mistaken idea that, data like maps need to be visual. And so I said, let's make them not visual, because of course we can do that. And because I have that mentality, it's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two quick things I want to add. When you're talking about the different types of learners, if this is your first time kind of thinking and exploring this world, there is a principle or a concept called universal design for learning that talks about how to teach and deliver and learn in different ways. Highly recommend diving into that. But what I want to get into is some of the experiences or some of those use cases. Because when we were showing this to my team, one of them immediately recognized it. And I want to go back because everybody experienced this earlier this year, the eclipse. So walk us through what you did with the eclipse and how you took something that a lot of people said this is purely visual. How did you turn that into a non-visual experience?
Very easily. I don't think it took very long at all. We said, okay, we have some geographic data that is numbers basically in a list of the contiguous 50 states. So literally, it is just numbers that show the border of the U.S. states in their latitude and longitude. And then we, over the top of that, I had somebody draw out more vector data representing the lines of totality. So we had 100% totality, we had 95% partial totality, 50% partial totality, and we put those over the top of the, using their coordinates over the top of the geographic data for the states. And then we added some properties to those lines of totality. So every single feature in Audium needs to have some name attribute, and it's either generated from other properties on that feature or we create the name. And so we called it, line of complete totality, or line of 95% partial totality, something like that. So that would be the name of that feature. And then we added some sounds to those features, both a 3D audio sound of this is where the artistic piece comes in, because creating a representation is half art, half data representation. And so the artistic piece was that we needed to show what is a sound that could represent totality. And so we thought about what are some eclipse like songs, and we thought of the Eclipse by Pink Floyd, and I think that's in the key of D, I want to say. And so we used a D chord and said we're going to add notes on top of this to represent completing the totality. And so we had like a single note for 50%, two notes for 75%, three notes for 95%, and then we added a fourth note, on the top for the 100% totality, and then made it sound more glorious, I guess, and in a fuller chord, so that it was very clear that that is full totality. And then on top of that, we added on different levels of animal activity depending on the level of totality. So complete totality would have no animals, and no totality would have a lot of animals. So that's kind of what we did.
And me being in Ohio, we were in like the 99 to 100% totality, and I can tell you that you are accurate. All of the animals, birds, everything silent the entire time, like during the eclipse, during the totality, and then like right after it, they were doing like the birds were singing their morning song.
Yeah.
In the middle of the afternoon. Like it was a completely like wild experience, because like middle of the afternoon they're singing like their nighttime songs, and then 10 minutes later it's morning again. And like it got cold outside. Like it was wild. And your representation, the non-visual representation, like just insane, like incredibly accurate to the T of how many animals during totality, the latitude longitude overlay with where you're at located geographically to totality, all of that being turned into a non-visual is like, I think majority of people would not even like think about that.
Yeah.
And the other use cases you have, and I've played around with some of them when you were showing me the first time, just like almost getting giddy seeing just how accessible this was, even from a non-visual, even from a low vision standpoint, because visuals and maps and graphs and charts, like these things are all around us all of the time. And it just becomes like second nature, to where we don't even acknowledge them when we encounter them, unless you're on our side, low vision, trying to zoom in and magnify and everything getting smashed down, like you said, or your screen reader, non-visual, and you're just hearing graphic clickable, right? And
Yeah.
so what you're doing, and I want to get into this of where is the application for accessible map in your opinion? Where is like the top priority, the most widely used place that something like this needs to be put in? Is it, I know you mentioned airports, is it parks department websites, is it where are those priority points that this conversation needs to expand to?
Well, I want to say first that I've done a study where I asked blind people, how many maps do you view a year? And I also did this in a couple different ways. And really the response I got was less than one map across all modalities. And that's just astonishing compared to over 100 maps a year for sighted folks. And for, most people, they don't even realize when they're viewing a map most of the time. And so, it's kind of hard for them to recognize that they're viewing a map. So I think it's probably closer to 200 a year for a sighted person. And that is just a huge gap.
Yep.
And so that's kind of the problem that we're trying to solve here. There are some statistics that say there are about 30 million publicly facing maps on the web that are subject to different accessibility requirements, depending on what state you're in and whatnot. And about 15 million of those are Google Maps. And so the overwhelming majority of impact is going to happen if somebody from Google wants to work with us to make those maps accessible. And so that would be hands down the biggest impact that could happen. There are many other platforms out there like Esri and Microsoft and Apple Maps, and those are much smaller, but they also have big impacts in their respective areas. And again, working with those types of places is also going to be the biggest impact. But around applications of specific maps, I would say that blind people want to view park maps. That is something that I've had a lot of blind people tell me in research that I've done, like park maps, neighborhood maps of where they're going to be, store maps, so buildings that they want to investigate, like hospitals, and just having access to geographic information, like more geographic information, is it's they just want more. That's the constant refrain that I hear when people view an audio map. They just say, I want more of this, like give me more. And that is really the key. Whatever we can do to make a map accessible, it needs to be accessible. So yes, airports are awesome. Indoor spaces are really great. Any type of indoor space, stadium, being able to select a seat on an airplane map, being able to select a seat in a stadium or a theater, that's also really important because you're losing customers if you can't, market to a blind person. And just if you're creating a news article, like about the different wars that are going on, being able to show those maps that have accessible information, or voting result maps. We would like to make it a live result tracker of the election that's coming up, and that's typically done with a table. But blind people can't identify what a blue wave looks like, or a red wall, or whatever those things are called that happen on an election map. And so as a blind person, I want to know that. I want to be part of that conversation. And even zoning for political districts. Like I had a blind person say, I don't know what they mean when they say the word gerrymander. Like I can conceptually understand it, but I don't really know why I should be voting against this. Like it sounds like a good idea, but why is it called gerrymandering? Because I hear it looks like a salamander. So people don't really understand these things from a visceral level, because it's just conceptual at this point.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's essentially endless application, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're in an airport or a library or a hotel.
There are 20 professions, 20 plus professions that rely on geographic maps in order to do their job. I mean,
Yeah.
even a conference, like you need a map to show where to put those tables, and that's not accessible at all.
Yeah, and you're hinting into the employment space, so I think this conversation is going to open up a ton of conversations, because it's a space that, not like you said, people say 100, but it's probably closer to 200. It's one of those things that we go through our day-to-day lives, and unless you live and experience it firsthand, it's not something that you're necessarily stopping and thinking about. That's the whole reason we're having these conversations, doing these videos, is to spark that new conversation, to get people talking, to get people thinking in ways that they typically wouldn't. Because when we talk about accessibility, immediately people are going to wheelchair ramps and tactile sidewalks, and making good color contrast on their social media posts. Like there's this sort of predetermined bucket of accessibility that people go to. There is this whole other world out there that we are trying to bring to the light and bring to the conversation. So government, private entity, nonprofit, whatever that is, politics, whatever, accessibility needs to be a part of that conversation, and you are doing exactly that, and by bringing it to the conversation. So very, very intrigued, very curious. What is sort of on the horizon for you? What is next step? What are you looking to, sort of going into the election period, going into 2025? What's next?
We're really trying to build partners and find folks who want to take the leap and make their maps accessible at this point. So if you're a digital accessibility professional and you're working with clients, I'd love to chat with you, and talk about how we can collaborate to bring accessibility to your clients. Or if you have a turn-by-turn navigation app, I'd love to talk about the same topic. If you have an inaccessible map, and especially if you're getting ready to deal with the new ADA Title II regs, or you're in Colorado or one of these places that are passing these digital accessibility laws, let's chat, because your map is 99.99% inaccessible. And unfortunately, there are a lot of articles out there about how to make maps accessible, and they're not right. They're not correct. So a lot of people say you need to find the point of this map and describe it in text, or create a table of the map and present that to the user. And sadly, that's not compliant, because section 1.1.1 of the Web Accessibility Guidelines is extremely clear. It says you need to provide a text alternative that allows equivalent, that it serves the equivalent purpose to the visual map. And if you just give a person a table of results, like election results, or even of COVID statistics, then why didn't that get given to the sighted people? Why did they give a map? It's because we need that extra geographic information that's part of the map. And so because you give somebody a table, they're completely lacking any of the geographic information that makes a map a map. And so you need a map to be accessible. And so that's what we're doing with Audium. Audium's not the only solution out there. I've written a lot of blog posts on how to create your own detailed text descriptions, because you can. Indexing is a big issue with those, and also keeping up to date. And they're also, there's a lot of risks around separate but equal solutions. And so there are some issues with creating your own But typical articles that say turn by turn directions, nearby address searches, simple alt text, or turn by tables are not accessible anymore.
Gotcha. And so if somebody does want to reach out, what's the best place or way to get a hold of you?
xrnavigation.io. That's my website. You can find me there. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Brandon Biggs, and you can email me at brandon.biggs@xrnavigation.io, or just contact me through my website, and you can find me.
Yep, and we'll include all the links down in the description so that you don't have to go searching through the ethers to find. You'll have direct access to Brandon to get a hold of him, to reach out, to start that conversation, or to continue pre-existing conversations, because that's what we're all about here. So Brandon, you and I could talk about this all day. We are just scratching the surface with this conversation, and so without getting too far into the weeds, I just want to thank you for jumping on, having a quick conversation just to introduce this, to start a new conversation. And I'm sure you'll have plenty of people reaching out to continue this conversation with you offline. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you so much, James. There's a lot to do in this space, but with everybody's help, we can push it forward.
Absolutely. That's what we're doing. So awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll see you in the next one.